All right, it's my pleasure to welcome back to the show WKMG News 6 Sports Director Jamie Seh. I got to bring her into some Springsteen, of course, because she has seen more concerts than anybody I've ever known of the boss.
I've seen a couple. I've got three more coming up in the new year in 2023 because he and the E Street Band are going on tour. They're stopping in Orlando early on in February, so I'll see him in Tampa, Orlando, and my hometown of Albany, New York this year. So
Oh,
fun.
that's outstanding. That's outstanding. So yeah, you'll be hitting the road hard for sure. So that's good.
Absolutely.
Good
Yep,
stuff.
I will.
All right. So first, let's talk about the recently concluded Cure Bowl, which of course you are the national radio voice for. Another outstanding job on your part there. And a top 25 matchup with UTSA and Troy.
Yeah.
Um, what a
Yeah.
what an interesting ball game that was.
It was interesting. It was interesting because, these two teams came in with identical records. They were both 11-2. They were both on 10-game winning streaks. UTSA, who's going to the American Athletic Conference next year. They were the Conference USA champions. Troy, the Sun Belt champions. Sun Belt is always really good. But both of these teams wanted to make a case as they're, one of the best in the group of five outside of probably Tulane, right? Because Tulane's going to the Cotton Bowl. But they were fighting for the right to say, hey, we're right up there. And it was an interesting game because UTSA came in with one of the highest scoring offenses in the country. They averaged almost 39 points a game, whereas Troy had this incredible defense, and the defense won out. It was a very interesting game. We've seen some crazy Cure Bowls the last couple of years with back and forth scoring, coming down to the wire, or even one went into overtime 2 years ago. This year was a lot different. It was not a clean game. UTSA committed 4 turnovers and committed a lot of penalties, and that allowed Troy to win the game. And it was a low-scoring one. It was 18-12. Both offenses struggled at the start to score points. And then finally the Roadrunners put one in, and we expected that. But then they started making mistakes, and Troy pretty much played mistake-free football for the most part in terms of turnovers and fewer penalties, and Troy won the game. It was interesting though. I think if they played 10 times, I think UTSA would probably win like 6 out of the 10 or 7 out of the 10. They just beat themselves. But it was fun. Both teams that came here to Orlando, were really into it, really into the festivities. I mean, what the Cure Bowl is all about is awesome. Its mission is to raise money and awareness in the fight against cancer. And every player that plays in the game is on board with that, and they talk about it. So that's priority number one. And then the second priority for the bowl is obviously to put on a good show, bring 2 good football teams together, which they did. And then the third priority is treat these conference champions who come to Orlando to a memorable time. And, seeing video on social media of these teams as they prepared for the Cure Bowl, doing the extracurricular activities, looked like they had a blast. When they were going to Universal, they stay on Universal property, they do charity events, and they seemed like they were all in. So I think it was a success. I really do. The game could have been a little bit smoother. It was funny because, it's the second earliest bowl game of the season. It was bowl number 2. It seemed like these teams were a little rusty. At least UTSA was, but it was still fun. It was still fun. I mean, it was still dramatic because it was a 1-score game, and the Roadrunners had a chance to win at the towards the end, and they couldn't do it. So it was interesting. I'm rooting for UTSA though to become that next group of 5 team to make some noise. That's their goal. They're still a young program, just over 10 years old in FBS. So I'm rooting for UTSA, and then Troy came in with a lot of tradition. Over 100 years of playing football, with some big wins under their belts against Power Fives, and they kind of got back to where they belong in terms of the smaller programs. So it was fun. I mean, it was a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
and I know I'm rambling on about this, but it's one of my favorite experiences about the Cure Bowl is you see these group of 5 teams that maybe you don't pay attention to during the regular season, and maybe you should, but you learn about them. You learn about the cultures of both programs, and it really opens to your eyes to what else is out there and how many good football players there are out there across the country, no matter what level.
Yeah, I found it interesting in the game too. It looked like in spots it was getting a little chippy, and I've kind of noticed that in some other bowl games too recently. And of course, we know, what was it, a year or two ago, Tulsa and Ole Miss had a dramatic scuffle after the game. Um, is there anything you can attribute that kind of thing to? Like, are they tired of seeing each other all week or something?
I don't know. I think, we did see that, and it was towards the end of the game. I honestly think it was frustration on UTSA's part. It was a physical game. It was a physical game. Both teams were bullies up front, stopping the run. UTSA's defense was not highly touted coming in. It probably should have been, because they got to Troy's quarterback several times and had at least 10 tackles for losses. So it was really physical up front. And when those two lines come together and things are happening, tempers flare. I honestly do think it was UTSA's frustration taking over. The fact that they turned the ball over 4 times, they'd start to drive, they'd get something going, and maybe there was an interception or a fumble. There was another play I remember late in the game, and it was on I think it was on UTSA's last offensive drive, really their last chance to perhaps win the game. And the quarterback, Frank Harris, was running out of bounds and he got hit. Could have been called a late hit, but there was no call. And the Roadrunners were upset about that, and that kind of carried over into the rest of the plays. And then, yeah, I just think it was frustration. We don't know what's being said between the lines, if there's some smack talk by both teams. But it also shows how much the teams that come into this bowl care and how much they want to win. They want, that's the cool thing I think about the Cure Bowl. It's like, none of these players entered the portal and skipped the bowl. They all played in it. This was not a game to be dismissed by either program, by players from either teams. And, they wanted to win, and frustration boiled over on the side of the losing team. That's for sure.
Yeah. And of course, what this game presents for you is you get to exercise a different skill than your normal day-to-day broadcasting. Tell me a little bit about, the average fan probably thinks you just show up and talk about what you see. Tell me more about the preparation that goes into this.
Yeah, doing play-by-play is hard. It is hard. So, I get maybe one game a year. I get the Cure Bowl, and that's it. That's my one football game. After the Apollo season ended, which cut short, I get one game. I get the Cure Bowl, but there is a lot of preparation. It's hours and hours of preparation, and the preparation basically starts when you find out what the matchup is. Early on, it's just a little bit of research into what these teams are about. Okay, all right, it's Troy, UTSA. All right, I knew they were, hovering around the top 25, but how good are they? What are they about? And then you kind of scratch the surface, in the early times after the bowl matchup is announced. But then, I pretty much start preparing about 6 or 7 days in advance, tuning into Zoom calls, when the teams have media availability on their campuses before they move operation to Orlando. And then it's just a lot of research. You get a spot chart done and memorization of these players. It's like you're learning 2 brand new teams. UCF, Florida State didn't play any of these teams, didn't play Troy, didn't play UTSA. So it's like you really have to study and figure out, all right, these are the key players that you anticipate making plays in this game. And for both teams, it was kind of obvious. It was like, all right, you knew the quarterbacks, you knew the running backs, because they pretty much just ran one guy. Both teams ran one guy in the backfield with the quarterback. And then each team had pretty much 3 receivers, because UTSA actually came in with a lot of injuries and some of their key guys were out, and some tight ends on offense. But then defensively, any guys can make a play. And UTSA had a really deep rotation on the defensive line and in the secondary. So any of these guys can make plays. And for Troy, the secondary made plays. They were picking off passes, they were recovering fumbles. So it's just a lot of study and prep work. And you want to know each team as well as you can, like you've been covering them all season, even though you're like cramming the whole week. And it's like cramming for an exam. And then you get there and you do it. And I always try and brush up on my play-by-play terminology and kind of calm myself down a little bit and listen to other broadcasters, just so I get into that mode, because it's so different from what I do at Channel 6. You know, it's like, and then for a football game, especially a college football game, it's like, it's 4 hours of talking. It's a 4-hour broadcast. So it's like, okay, you have to get your stamina up. You got to be ready. You got to bring energy. And it's almost like playing in a football game. It's like, if you botch a call, just move on to the next play. You know, that's kind of how it is. And, you know, I still feel I'm very much a rookie doing it, because, you know, I do it once a year. So it's just, I feel like the first 5 minutes, you knock the rust off, and then you kind of get into a groove. And then by the second half, and when the game comes down to the wire, that's when you're starting to really, you're in a groove and you're fine. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it, but it's a lot of fun. It's exhilarating, especially like when you had a game like it was last year between Coastal Carolina and Northern Illinois, when the teams were going just touchdown for touchdown.
Yeah.
So, and then you have to know all the rules. You have to know where to look on the field. Like if you divert your eyes for 1 second, there might be a flag somewhere. You didn't see it and you're missing something key. You know, you might miss the fact that the refs are going to review a play because you're not sure exactly what's going on. You know, nobody's telling you. So it's hard. It's hard, but it's fun, and the work that you put in is well worth it.
Yeah, and of course, you know, you also have to be able to get the analyst room to do their thing too. So there's a lot of moving parts, that's for sure.
Yes, yeah, and Landry Burdine was my color guy for the 2nd year in a row, and he's great. He's from TCU. We played at TCU, so he's fired up for this season. But he's great. You know, he brings a ton of energy and knowledge and everything like that. So I lean on him. I mean, I lean on him to, you know, I'll just call out a play and he'll break it down, and then I take over again.
Awesome. Great job as always. And of course, everything about the Cure Bowl, yeah, obviously you stated, you know, what their mission is and what they do. It's a huge benefit for this community for sure.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, like on the surface, you know, in comparison to the other bowls here, which are terrific, you know, you got the Cheez-It Bowl and then you got the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, which are bringing in great teams. I mean, Florida State, Oklahoma is going to be super fun. And then Purdue and LSU, you know, those are high profile teams from the Power Five. You may, you know, fans, ordinary fans who don't follow UTSA and Troy might look at the Cure Bowl and be like, oh, well, you know, they're just two small schools. We're not interested. But if you go, you will be entertained by this Cure Bowl. Like it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And I think it's great that Orlando has 3 bowl games. Not many communities do. I think, you know, Dallas, you know, I think it's Dallas and us, you know, are the ones that have more than 2 bowl games. I could be wrong, but you know, Dallas, Arlington, Fort Worth area, and Orlando, you know, there's a reason for it. I wish the community came out a little bit stronger for the Cure Bowl, but it's hard because the regular season and the conference championship just ended. People are getting ready for Christmas, you know, then there's the other bowl games coming up. But it's really fun. And they play it at Exploria Stadium, the soccer stadium, and it's a perfect venue for it. It's intimate. There's great seats. It's comfortable, easy in and out. So like, I hope somebody, you know, if people are watching this and they haven't been to a Cure Bowl, consider it for next year, because I've been to all of them and I've been entertained by every single one of them.
Outstanding. And of course, speaking of the bowl season, UCF making their way to the Military Bowl next week.
Yeah.
I'm making that road trip myself to go freeze in Annapolis. But
Well, yeah, that'll be fun. It's funny. Unfortunately, we're not going. And it has to do with budgetary reasons because of the hurricanes. Because the station had to spend so much on our hurricane coverage, our budget is a little strapped. So unfortunately, we won't be traveling with UCF, but I really wanted to go. I've never seen Annapolis before. And I think there's been enough time, a lot of things have happened with UCF in the last month, right? Losing to Navy in the regular season, then losing in the conference championship to Tulane, then some guys, entering the transfer portal, the coordinators leaving UCF. A lot of things have happened. But I think for the guys who stuck around, there's some serious senior leaders and guys who are coming back, who have really invested in the program that I think, they want to play well in this bowl game. They understand what they're playing for. And Duke's a great matchup. I mean, it's not going to be easy. Not going to be easy to win.
Yeah, I say, because like on paper, they, average about the same amount of points per game and about the same amount of points given up per game. And
Yeah.
so it could be a track meet or it could be, 14-10.
Yeah, it could be. It could be like I think it one thing that's a positive is that I think John Rice Plumlee will be as healthy as he's been. And when he's healthy, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. And Duke might not be used to, that kind of dual threat who's so quick and shifty and speedy. I mean, I know they've faced dual threat quarterbacks before, obviously, and there are great quarterbacks in the ACC. But, John Rice is a little different. He's a different dual threat guy because he's so little, and he's hard to track down. He's hard to tackle, and he's got this will to succeed, and go for those extra yards. So I think it'll be fun. I hope UCF is up for it. I hope they make it. It would be great to get a 10th win for the Knights.
Yeah, and of course you mentioned John Rice being healthy is really key because he really wasn't healthy in the last legs of the season. And thank God Mikey Keene was there to help save the day a few times.
Yeah.
But when John Rice is healthy, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. The one thing is teams will game plan for him now because they know it's going to be him, and there will be no question whether it's going to be Keene or Plumlee, obviously. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how the Knights have handled the practices for the bowl prep and everything like that, and getting their receivers who are still there involved. Javon Baker's great. I hope they open it up. And I'm looking forward to RJ Harvey, see what he can do too, and because I think he's got the potential to be great. I really do.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens, but with Isaiah Bowser, leaving and everything like that, Harvey might be the guy next year.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a very special player myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally agree with you there. What did you make of Mikey Keene's decision not to burn his red shirt? I mean, this is a very interesting time in college football with the red shirts, the NIL, the transfer portal, all that good stuff.
It was huge, and it's he was a good soldier the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
The whole time he was here, he was a good soldier, and sometimes you do have to be selfish. He knew that his future was not UCF. After being the starter for the majority of last year, you would think, okay, this job is mine. Well, it wasn't. And John Rice was coming back next year. They've got Thomas Castellanos waiting in the wings. Mikey knew that his future was not UCF, so he had to be selfish. And I don't blame him. I mean, it's college football is tricky now, isn't it? There's a more degree of selfishness and less loyalty. But again, I don't blame Mikey for not making himself available. Maybe that's not being a team player.
Well, you could also look at it like, well, UCF never really fully committed to me.
Exactly.
So
exactly. So it's like, yeah, it was a tough spot. And, I'm sure Gus didn't want to play him all those times, but he had to.
Mhm.
He had to, and Gus knew the reality that when he picked John Rice to be the starter this season, I'm sure he knew that Mikey was going to be out of there by the end, at the end of the season. That, that's just the way it is. So I'm sure Gus didn't want to go through those games, but he had to because John Rice got injured. But yeah, I mean, I don't blame my guy. I hope he does well. He just announced, he's committing to Fresno State. It's closer to home for him. I hope he does well. He was a very nice young man. I thought he always represented himself and UCF really well. Well-spoken kid, and played hard, and he wanted to do well. He wanted to win and everything like that. And he didn't give up. He didn't quit on the team. He didn't walk away when he didn't win the job. He stuck with it the whole time and then came in and, understood his role and, just decided to be selfish the one time. And I don't blame him for that.
Yeah. And for the big games he won here, he'll never have to buy an adult beverage when he becomes an adult.
He beat the Gators. He beat the Florida Gators. He had the pass, he had the pass to Ryan O'Keefe to beat the Florida Gators in the Gasparilla Bowl last year. So
and
yeah.
he beat Cincinnati.
So he beat Cincinnati, yes, absolutely. Beat Cincinnati, beat the Florida Gators. He did well. He was totally thrown into the fire last year. Crazy. And yeah, like I wish like for his sake, like it would have been awesome had he come back this much better. Where he would have left no doubt and he would have won the job. But I really believe, the competition was fair and square between him and John Rice Plumlee, and Plumlee brings a different element and maturity, that Gus liked. And I like John Rice too. I think he's represented UCF really well. And when he's been good, he's been really good.
No question.
Yeah.
All right. Of course, one of the things that we have to do when you're on the show is talk about the Buffalo Bills.
Nice. Yes. They're pretty good.
They're pretty
good.
Yeah. So tell, give me your thoughts on their 11-3 season thus far.
Well, it's been phenomenal. And like when you think about their losses, they lost to the Dolphins by 2. They lost to the Vikings, in overtime after crazy happenings at the end. A game they should have won because they were in control of it. That was a lesson. They lose to the Jets, who I don't think they were prepared to play that day, but it was close. All their 3 losses have been close. I was at that Miami game in Miami, and it was really, really hot. It was really hot, and it was a big factor. So I think the Bills are good. They're getting healthier. They're going to miss Von Miller in the playoffs because he's got that experience of winning it all. And he is that closer that the announcers talk about all the time, that when, the defense needs to make a play, that's his time to step up in the fourth quarter. But Josh Allen looked terrific, I thought, against the Dolphins this past Saturday. I thought, because he hurt his elbow in the loss to the Jets, and that took a toll for about 3 weeks. But, and when they were having like games and kind of close proximity or whatever, they lose to the Jets, and then they had a game pretty quickly after that, and then the Thanksgiving game that was all snowed out and everything like that. They had some Thursday games and everything like that. But Josh Allen, I feel, is healthy. He was flinging the ball, and that drive, the game-winning drive against the Dolphins this past Saturday, was perfect. And and it's just like, they still have a lot of tape to look at and things to correct, but they're correctable things, stopping the run. Raheem Mostert got around on the outside pretty easily, but he's really good. So it's just like things that are correctable. I think they'll shore up their defense against the run, because in the beginning of the season, it was really good. It's sputtered a little bit, but no, I'm excited. Josh Allen made the Pro Bowl today. I'm just really excited. I'm looking for, their Dave Davis to step up a little bit more, have some more targets thrown to him, have him targeted a little bit more. He's outstanding. Stephon Diggs is a Pro Bowler. He's having a great season. And their tight ends are really good. Like, I'm really excited. I mean, it's unbelievable. They've won 11 games. They're 11-3. They got the Bears this week. That should be a winnable game. And then after that, they've got Cincinnati, which is going to be tough. So that'll be a telling game, because it'll be a playoff game, pretty much in the regular season. And then they finish up with the Patriots. So they've got some big games, but handle their business against the Bears like they should. Get ready for the Bengals, and that'll be interesting. And then we'll see. But I hope they get that bye week, and I hope they get the number 1 seed. I hope they get the bye week, and then I hope they're hosting games in Buffalo because it's brutal.
Yeah, that is tough for the opposition, of course. And I guess there's really no shame in losing to the Vikings, because they win all sorts of crazy football games.
It's been nuts. Yeah, the Vikings have been nuts. I mean, they're the comeback kids. It's weird. I mean, Kirk Cousins oh my gosh, he's had a terrific season. Just, I think his best season ever. I mean, just what he's been able to do. And yeah, they don't give up. So
yeah. It's interesting because their point differential for and against is 2. It's 2, but they've won 11 games, which you can't win 11 games by accident.
Right. Exactly. They don't give up, gosh, that Bills Vikings game too. As soon as Dalvin Cook made that big run for the touchdown, I'm like, okay, here we go. The Bills didn't slam the door. Again, it was a good lesson. When you're up by that much, slam the door. Don't let up. So I don't know, but I'm really excited. I think Josh Allen is throwing the ball really well. He's made really good decisions the last couple of games. So I'm excited.
And you never know, if chalk holds, depending on how the seedings and all that work out at the end. I mean, you could be looking at another, Chiefs matchup in the playoffs. I mean,
probably, yeah. Yep. Well, yeah, like what I'm hoping is, because the Dolphins do scare me a little bit. Because like Jalen Waddle in both games has had like long touchdowns. It's just like, oh gosh. Yeah, so right now it looks like the Dolphins would face the Chiefs in the playoffs. They're on that track, so I hope it stays that way. And yeah, I mean, maybe the Bills will get the Chiefs. Knock on wood, if they make it to the AFC Championship, maybe the Bills get the Chiefs in Buffalo this time and not in Kansas City. Although Buffalo hasn't played poorly in Kansas City, right?
Yeah,
they've beaten them. So, but yeah, I would love it if it was in Buffalo. Yeah. But I'm optimistic, and then we'll see what happens. Should they get to the Super Bowl, whether it's the Eagles or the Niners. Those are my 2 picks from the NFC. Eagles or Niners. So
yeah. Of course, I'm a Cowboys fan, so I'm just like so pessimistic about, even though they've won 10 games, I'm still very pessimistic.
Yeah, you never know with the Cowboys though. Like, that's the thing. You never, like, who would have seen that this past weekend coming, against the Jags? But the Cowboys are good, and it's football. It's hard to win football games. You never know.
Yes.
So
I heard a great phrase by actually the Cowboys' great play-by-play guy, Brad Sham. It says, last week is never met this week, and they're never going to meet.
Yeah. It's a very good point. So who do the Cowboys have this weekend?
They have the Eagles.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Yeah, so
interesting.
And that'll be dependent on Jalen Hurts' availability for the Eagles. But yeah, that's a tall order. It's in Dallas, so.
Okay. Well,
we'll see.
I think Dallas will win it. I do. I think they'll win it. I do. I think the Cowboys will win on their home turf.
All right, I'm banking on that. Thank you.
I do. No, I do. Yep. Even though you just told me who they were playing. Yeah, no, they're gonna win. That's right. So.
Yeah, I think after last week they might be a little salty. So
well, you hope they are.
Yeah.
You hope they are, right? Yeah. I mean, that was just. Yeah. Well, it's funny because the Bills lost to the Jags last year, and I was at that game, and it was just like, oh man, but it was a wake-up call. And then they had a really good run in December and made it all the way to the AFC Championship, and it's 13 seconds away from the Super Bowl. So,
well,
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, Jamie, I always appreciate you coming on the show anytime I ask. You're you're great. I appreciate you doing that. And of course, I want to wish you and yours a very, very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I always enjoy coming on your show. I always enjoy our conversations about UCF and the Cure Bowl and the Bills and football and everything. And you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And let's hope we're toasting UCF. You know, that's the bowl game I'm looking forward to. That and the Florida State game. And yeah, I hope UCF gets it done against Duke.
All right. Sounds good. Jamie, thanks again.
Thank you, Jeff.